Hello, I'm Hannah, and this is Hannah's Books, and I'm here finally for a tag video, and actually on a Tuesday too. Today, I want to answer the lovely set of questions that Robert G., reader of books, set out for all of us other readers of books to consider. They are general questions, not specifically bookish ones, but he was wondering if these questions might be answered differently by readers and non-readers. An interesting idea. For me, I know I love to chat with other readers about our lives aside from books, and these questions definitely open up some of that conversation. So let's jump straight into the questions. I'm going to try to make this video a quick one. Number one is, what is your favorite kind of food? I absolutely love spicy food of any kind. My very favorite foods are Indian and Ethiopian. The particular area I live in has a significant population of people of South Indian descent whose food traditions are a little different from the Indian food I see most frequently in restaurants in other places. One difference is that South Indian food traditions lean towards vegetarian, although other regional Indian cuisines usually have plenty of traditional dishes that are vegetarian too. Just to be fully forthcoming, while I eat a primarily vegan diet, I fairly often add in non-vegan yogurt, and I'll happily eat anything when I'm visiting other people, and sometimes even when I'm the cook. Well, anything except licorice, that is. There's also a very large Ethiopian community in my neighborhood. In fact, the Ethiopian population is so large here that local schools publish their announcements in English, Spanish, and Amharic. Many immigrants from these groups, Indian and Ethiopian, but also Vietnamese and Salvadoran residents, have opened fantastic local restaurants, which are usually fairly affordable too. But most of the time, I cook my own food, and especially love to cook Indian food from various regions. I'm not especially concerned when I'm cooking for myself about being, quote, authentic. So I tend to take a fairly standard dish, but then add in whatever is in need of picking in my garden or on its last legs in my refrigerator. I can imagine that actual home cooks throughout India probably do the same thing. I don't cook Indian for every single supper, but at least during the summer so far, it's been kind of close. When I'm on the coast of South Carolina, where most of my family lives, I try to eat some local seafood. And then, of course, when I'm in Boston, I love to help with whatever my son wants to cook, which is often Thai food or homemade pasta. And of course, when I'm at High Cottage, I love a good spinach and feta calzone. I can go on about food. Question 2. What is your favorite kind of music? This is kind of complicated. My father, brother, and son are, or were in my father's case, musicians. Dad collected folk music as part of his career as a double-credentialed folklorist and historian in Scotland and Ireland when I was little, and in North and South Carolina throughout his entire life. He performed roughly 50 concerts a year where he played and discussed various folk music traditions and their cultural contexts. In addition, as a listener and occasional participant, he was also an enormous fan of early jazz, which he fell in love with when he served in the Army during the peacetime draft, soon after he finished college. And finally, he was astonishingly knowledgeable about classical music, although he didn't play it himself. At any rate, those were the 3 kinds of music I heard regularly when I was a young person: traditional folk music from a variety of places, jazz, and classical. Imagine my surprise when I got to college and no one listened to most of my music at all, and I barely knew their Police and U2 albums. Of course, that didn't mean I didn't belatedly fall in love with the Police and U2 and the rest of 80s music. And then when I was 25, I lost my hearing in one ear. It's a long story, but my acoustic nerve was cut, so I couldn't use standard hearing aids either. And even after all my years of piano lessons and a house full of music, I suddenly lost all interest in music. Suddenly the depth was gone, and it felt like such a loss that I just abandoned the interest. Then, many years later, after I'd become a parent, my son decided he wanted to take violin lessons, and he fairly quickly became quite serious about playing classical music. And then he got deeply involved in the folk community. He studied Irish folk music in the northwest corner of Ireland one summer, and has played English folk music for Morris dance teams for years, and for contra dances all along the East Coast. And when he was in high school, he released a low distribution album with his band. And now he's flirting with putting together a band that's sort of a fusion of Appalachian music and klezmer, and lots of other ideas and opportunities. So for quite a while, I've gotten to hear a lot of amazing live music, either when my son was playing or his friends were, or musicians he admired were performing. But to be honest, I know I don't get nearly the joy from music that the other people I love do. What I do get joy from is watching them play. Okay, that was long-winded, but let's go into the third question. If you were prevented from reading ever again, what would you do? I would watch BookTube. While I'm sure that would make me sad that I couldn't read some of the books you all would be talking about in the videos and comments, it would at least help me stay connected to the bookish world. And while I'm watching the videos, I'm definitely going to be knitting as well. Number 4, what is your favorite city? Although I love my home city of Washington, D.C., it's not in my top 4 cities I know well. I first fell in love with Boston back when I was a teenager, and I still love it. Later, when I moved to Philadelphia, I thought I might have found a city I'd want to live in forever, but it didn't work out that way. I've never lived in the other 2, but absolutely adore visiting both San Francisco and New Orleans. Notice I only listed cities in the U.S., and that's mostly because I've spent far too little extended time in world cities, and don't feel like I know them quite well enough to include them here. Next, do you have a favorite alcoholic beverage? I don't drink especially often, but I do enjoy a glass or 2 of wine, red or white, with friends. I can enjoy a porter as well, or a nice bitter IPA. Bob joked in his video that he didn't really think of beer and wine as alcoholic, and if I have to choose something harder, it would be gin, either in a dirty martini with extra olives, or a French 75, which is basically gin or brandy mixed with orange liqueur and lemon juice, and then topped with champagne, a drink I first tasted in New Orleans. And how about a non-alcoholic beverage? I'm a fan of coffee in the morning or strong black tea. During the day, I really love either flat water or, for a treat, sparkling water, which I always call seltzer. In the evenings, at least when it isn't 95 degrees in my house, I love to make myself some hot herbal tea. When it is 95 degrees in my house, as it is today, I just stick herbal tea bags in a glass jar with cool water in the morning and let it steep until it's well brewed, and then refrigerate it. Question 7 is, what is your favorite time of day? I'm a huge fan of sunset. So many of you have talked about sunrise, which is lovely when I have time to go out and watch the sky brighten up. But usually I drag myself out of bed and see all the work responsibilities that have appeared on my to-do list for the day. But sunset is the time when my workday is finishing up, and I can turn to reading for pleasure without guilt, and to spending time with friends. And sunset can be awfully beautiful itself. The idea of sitting in a rocking chair with a glass of wine, maybe, watching the sun drop below the horizon, sounds like perfection to me. But my usual life has me sitting on my front stoop on old plastic porch furniture, not able to see the horizon at all, but still watching the sky slowly darken, drinking tea or seltzer, and sometimes with a neighbor, and waiting for my solar porch lights to flick on. That'll do. finally, the easiest question, at least for me, is what is your favorite season? I adore autumn. The temperatures moderate, so it's quite pleasant to be outside again. The changing colors of the leaves are just beautiful. And for me, it's what I think of as the start of the year. Both my parents were teachers, and the beginning of school was a big deal for my whole family as we each started the next chapter of our lives. And I'm a secular Jew, and the Jewish New Year is in the autumn too, and that just adds to the feeling of new beginnings. I love Halloween. And finally, pomegranates have been a big favorite fruit of mine for years, and they come into season in the fall. My grandmother grew them in her garden when I was little, and I loved to pick out the seeds. And then years later, they became something of a symbol of my marriage to David, something we even had inscribed on our Jewish marriage certificate, etc. Pomegranates always bring me so many lovely memories. Thanks for this list of questions, Bob, and thanks to all of you for joining me today on this tag or questionnaire. See you soon here on Hannah's Books.